Welcome to our final panel of the conference, Veterans and the College Experience, Opportunities, Challenges, and Life Lessons. The original GI Bill in 1944 helped veterans return to school after their service in World War II. Over time, that's become enshrined as an essential benefit for military veterans. So much so that you could almost say that if there is a military version of the American dream, access to higher education is an essential part of it. In addition, Roosevelt University's own history is intertwined with veterans. During the war, the auditorium building was used as a Chicago Service Men's Center, including a bowling alley set up on the stage of the Auditorium Theater. And unsurprisingly, given its founding in 1945, Roosevelt's student body in those early years included large numbers of veterans returning from World War II, a number that was only increased by Roosevelt's rejection of any sort of quota system for minority or marginalized student groups, in contrast to almost all other universities at the time. This panel will focus on the experiences of 3 current Roosevelt students who have all served in the military, and 2 of whom are still active in the reserves. Veterans returning to school after their service often face a unique set of challenges. This panel will explore how they have navigated that transition and what advice they can share with veterans and, more generally, with other students who have faced their own challenges. Their life experiences outside of school enrich not just the classroom, but the entire community. As Joseph Campbell wrote, "A hero is someone who's given his or her life to something bigger than oneself." And the Americans who serve in our military certainly fit that definition. So we thank these student veterans for their service. We welcome them to our community, and we look forward to their insights tonight. I want to thank Kevin Smith for his help putting this panel together and for moderating tonight's discussion. He's the Director of Veteran and Military Services at Roosevelt University and has been instrumental in setting up and running the new Veterans Center at Roosevelt. Prior to Kevin's arrival late last year, he served 8 years as the Director of Veteran Affairs at a state university in Illinois. Kevin is currently a member of the Veterans Higher Education Affinity Group, the National Association of Veterans Program Administrators, the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. And in addition to that, Kevin served as the past president of the Illinois chapter of the American Council of Education and co-chairman for the board of directors with Illinois Joining Forces, which serves over 670,000 veterans in the state of Illinois. He's also a 9-year veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard. He currently oversees all things military and veteran related at Roosevelt and has helped countless student veterans over the years navigate their returns to higher education. I'm delighted to be able to turn the proceedings over tonight to the experienced hands of Kevin Smith.
Great. Thank you, Andy. I'm very humbled with that introduction. Thank you. So it's an honor to be here this evening, and I'm very excited to introduce our student veterans that have volunteered their time to join us in the panel. First of all, we have Rachel Sachs. Rachel is a junior. She is working towards her bachelor's in international studies, and she is also a U.S. Navy veteran. Our second panelist that we have is Anthony Flattery. Anthony is studying his Bachelor of Arts in Paralegal Studies. That is his major. He's also doing a minor in criminal justice. Anthony is currently serving with the United States Air Force Reserves, and he's been doing that for 10 years. And then our last individual is recently discharged from the Navy, Alejandro Pena. Alejandro is studying his Bachelor of Science in Biology. He is a senior freshman, I would say, instead of a new freshman. So, and he was a U.S. Navy corpsman veteran, and he just continued his service by enlisting in the U.S. Navy Reserves. So, the 3 of you, welcome to the panel. First of all, Rachel, if you would, just explain a little bit about what you did in the military and the reason why you decided to come to education or continue your education after you left the service.
Oh, sure. So while I was active duty, active duty just shy of 7 years. I worked at VQ3 on E6B Mercury's as an AT or an aviation electronic technician. And then from there, I went to VAQ 131 and worked on growlers. And then I got injured and I did more administrative work towards the end of my military career. And I am going back to education because since I'm no longer able to do aviation because of the injury that I sustained. So it was time for a career change.
Very good. Anthony?
So I joined in 2013. I've been a reservist for 10 years. I started out as a crew chief on a KC-135. That's a tanker aircraft. And I did that for about 6 years. After that, I did a few years as a jet engine mechanic, and that's what I do now. And I decided to go back to school for paralegal studies because there are a lot of changes that I wish to make in the world. So that's basically that.
It's pretty good motivation, Anthony. So Alejandro, I know you're our newest veteran, just separated,
That's right.
I think the day after school started, if I remember correctly. Tell us a little bit about what you did in the Navy and why you decided to go ahead and come to Roosevelt.
Yep. So just separated, like you said, the first week of school. I still currently am hospital corpsman. I worked in a clinic, and then I moved on to a medical battalion with the Marine Corps. And I worked planning some military events there, and in a rotation in the hospital as well. And the reason I decided to continue my education was to hopefully one day become a medical officer as a PA in the Navy.
Great. Thank you all for sharing with that. So keeping with the educational theme, let's discuss a little bit if we can. And I'm going to take a volunteer on this first question, though. But what do you think are some of the challenges and benefits of returning to school as a veteran? Anthony, anybody?
Sure. So I think some of the challenges that I endure are related to really the class experience, I think. There are certain disciplines that you learn in the military that you kind of carry with you throughout life, whether you're a reservist, active duty, certain things that, you tend to do or not do as a matter of etiquette. And there are certain things that you see in class, people that may be talking behind you or whispering, and you're trying to pay attention. Sometimes those things can be really distracting. And I think that's because of the discipline that we learn in the military. So that's something that I've sort of struggled with.
I'm going to kind of follow up with you on that, Anthony, because I know Alejandro will be experiencing this soon by doing the reserves. You've been doing reserves now for 10 years. So what challenges do you face juggling, reporting for drills once a month, doing your 2 weeks active duty? How does that interfere or help, or how do you coexist with school?
So, as far as when I do drill, or especially your annual tour, your days that you have to be down there beyond your drills, those can certainly get in the way, of life when you're trying to balance school with leisure time and things like that. Maybe you had a hard week at school, and then, you've got to be down for drill up early in the morning on a Saturday, so those are things that you contend with, trying to balance that. Also, if you're down at drill and it's a busy weekend, you're not going to have time to do homework and things like that. So that can make it a little bit challenging. Being in the military as a reservist is an added duty. You still have your everyday job, your 40 hours a week. So oftentimes the military can be in the way, but at the same time, the military has to come first. So,
yeah, good point. And it is, and I have all the respect for our active duty reservists, because it's a challenge. I mean, they definitely have to balance all of that. Rachel, anything that you want to add, or your experience?
Yeah. So I found that one of the harder challenges, at least for me, my situation's slightly different because I got medically retired due to my injury. But it was being kind of taken away from being part of something that's kind of greater than yourself, because that's what the military is, right? And going back to the school environment where you're more so independent and you have your freedom back, and people aren't constantly telling you what you need to do at certain times and everything, I've found to be more challenging than not, because I'm kind of a creature of habit and routine. So it's been a little difficult, but at the same time, I do think that it's been a benefit because I am more disciplined. This isn't my first time around with college. I did try to go to college before I joined the military. And it was a completely different beast. Like it was not a good time for me the first time I went. But I do think that because of the military, I'm more disciplined now, and that I'm able to handle maybe this isn't the best word, but like the pressure of college. I'm better to handle that now because of my military experience. So
Yeah. And you're not alone. I've over my years of running veterans centers at universities, right? That I see people like they went to school, like went to college after high school, right? And it just they weren't ready, right? They didn't have the maturity, didn't have the discipline, and then they go and join the military, and they come back 4, 5, 6 years later, and it's a different experience for them. And I think it's much more positive at that point, and that's what I've seen that over the years. So. Good. Thanks for sharing on that,
Yeah.
Rachel. Alejandro, so I'm curious to hear your take on this, because you went right from 4 years of active duty and then you went right into school. So how has that been for you, and what challenges are you experiencing or have you experienced?
Yeah, so I joined the military straight out of high school and did 6 years of active duty service. And all the classes that I had previously taken for college were online. And I didn't really get to experience life outside of the military as a young adult. So coming back in, the age gap between, like you said, I'm currently a freshman, the age gap between myself and the students, I thought it was going to play a big factor, but it's honestly not as bad. But just knowing who to ask for help, how I could use my benefits, all that posed a challenge at first when I didn't know anything. But coming to the veterans office and getting all my questions answered, and coming to the veterans office for any problem that I have, and them having taken care of it, was probably the greatest thing that RU has offered.
I'd like to hear that. That's nice, because we've worked diligently to establish that there at Roosevelt. And my experience in the past has been, if we create a one-stop shop for our student veterans, whether they have a financial aid question, whether it's how do my benefits work, what if I decide to change classes, what if I take a semester off, like all the questions, all the things that an everyday student has. Our student veterans have those questions plus more. And then we pride ourselves, my team, in addressing those and taking care of that need. We create that safety net, and then we hope you never need it, but if you need it, it's there. And that's kind of what our whole philosophy is. So let's go ahead and I want to follow up with that too. And if for any one of you that wants to jump in first, just as a follow-up question, what specific psychological or physical challenges have you seen or experienced yourself in transitioning veterans going into higher education, or just transitioning out of the service, period?
So I'll go first. It kind of goes back to the challenges that I mentioned with going from being part of something bigger than yourself, because it's the mission that comes first. It's while you're active, you're constantly thinking about the mission. You're trying to get everything done to complete your job. Coming from an atmosphere like that, and then going to a college setting where you really get the freedom back and you get to make your own choices. I think a lot of veterans struggle with that, not feeling like they're still part of something greater than what they were a part of when they were active duty, because even though you're a veteran and you still can relate to other veterans, it's not as active part of your life as it was for however many years you've served. So that's I'm still struggling with that. I'm still trying to figure it out. But it's a very interesting mindset to be put into and then taken out of once you come back to civilian life. And I don't think it's something that veterans talk about enough. At least overall, we might have conversations individually, one-on-one or something, but I don't think it's a conversation that many like to talk about. So
Yeah, I would agree with you. Any Alejandro, Anthony, you want to add to that?
I would say, Rachel, I agree with you on a lot of that. Now, a lot of that is specific to you, being active duty for so long. However, I do remind, I actually went to community college when I got back from deployment to Turkey. And I remember, there being some challenges there with that, just having been in the same routine for an extended period of time and then having to change, so that does add some challenge for sure.
Yeah. Alejandro?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge for me as well, getting back in a different, a change of pace. We're used to always being like, in a fast environment, getting things done. And when I came back, I felt like I wasn't doing much or enough. But I know many people that are veterans that I have talked to have felt that way. But, they tell me find a hobby, go to school, get involved in, with, like doing Silky's hikes with Wounded Warrior, like join an organization or stuff, that kind of stuff. So, that's what I've been doing. And the transition is still happening.
Yeah, yeah, and that is true. I've seen that over, I don't know, the last 10 years. I've been in this field. That I think probably one of the worst things is if you come home and then you don't do anything. Like you don't go to work, you don't go to school, and then I think things start to fester, and then it gets to be a little bit difficult. So that's good advice. And I think also when we're in the military, and I think especially with individuals that were in the military that were deployed, and we had in our last, the 20-year conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq, that when they were deployed and they were there, it was 24/7. They were just going, and then to come back here and then, say, oh, you mean I only have to work 40 hours in a week? That seems part-time to them, right? Because they're so programmed to do that. I think, Alejandro, you were sharing with me that during COVID, I thought you were deployed to Texas, and you were kind of sharing a little bit about that, about how much work you guys did in vaccinating the people of Texas, right? That was quite a deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we were working, I believe it was 6 days a week, early in the morning, getting up, sometimes doing PT, then going into work. And we were vaccinating, the population of like Dallas, Fort Worth area. And it was, COVID, really important. And it was constant, nonstop. Getting vaccines, same routine daily for roughly 4 to 5 months. And it did get a little draining, but overall had a sense of like proudness and that you were helping people out, that we were helping out the population.
Yeah. Anthony, and if you could just touch on it just briefly, I know you were deployed, I think, a couple of times, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that just totally disrupt everything that you were doing because you were shipped out of the country, correct?
Yeah. So I did one sort of long-term deployment, which was to Turkey. In that one, definitely uprooted my whole life. I didn't, you never know when you're going to be called upon, and that's, it's pretty true in terms of, we do rotations during more high tempo times out of our base. So it definitely was very taxing emotionally on me. Learning, hey, you're going to be gone for a while, and you've got to tell your significant other that, and your family, your friends, hey, I'm going to be gone for a while. And that really can be pretty tough. It's something that you have to adjust to pretty quickly. And you always have to be, flexible, really mentally flexible, because you never know when that day's going to come where you have to go. So, it changed everything for me. I was working at a prison, but regardless, it still changed everything for me, just being uprooted and leaving the country and being gone for a while. So,
yeah. Rachel, can you just go back and touch a little bit about, I know you went to community college first, and then, so can you kind of like walk us through how that whole process went with you going to school, and then what made you kind of decide to abandon that and then go to the military, and now you're back here? So.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I don't know if I'm just blurry on my end because I have eye issues, or if my camera's blurry. I apologize. I don't know what's going on. But college, first time around, it was one of those deals where I either had to move out or go to college. That was like kind of what my dad said. And I said, okay, I'm not ready to move out. So I went to college, didn't really know what I wanted to do, didn't really have direction. Tried that for a little bit, decided it wasn't for me, stopped going. And then it wasn't necessarily that it was super difficult. It was just I had no direction, and it was hard to be motivated when I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I struggled with that a lot. And then after I left the college and I just joined the workforce on my own. And then I didn't join the military until a few years after that. And then with my military experience, got out, had to do a complete career change because originally I wanted to do 20 years and work in aviation for the rest of my life. But due to the injury I got, I'm not able to do that even on the civilian side. So I had to go back to school, which wasn't ideal. I'm not, it wasn't ideal for what I wanted at the time. But now I get to see, I think it was like a blessing in disguise, so to speak, if I'm allowed to say that, because now I kind of have a direction. I know what I want to do, or at least an idea of what I want to do. I know what direction I need to lean towards, which was not at all what I knew of when I first went to college. So I struggled with that, and I do think that the military helped me with figuring that out, because once I decided that I didn't just want to waste my military experience. I wanted to utilize that, even if it wasn't in the same capacity as working on airplanes. I still wanted to utilize it. And so now that kind of pushed me in the direction I needed to go for like a full-time civilian career. So I'm super excited about that.
Good. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I think a lot of you have experienced this. When I first meet you, what's the question I always ask? What do you want to be when you grow up, right? Doesn't matter how old or how young you are. So, because we want to have that discussion, what are you, are you going to continue the same path that you had in the military? Are you retraining? And we've got, the VA, I should say, we administer the programs, has so many different programs that allows people to make those transitions. One thing that I'll interject and just share, with three of you and also with our audience, is that in the United States, we do have 20 million veterans in this country. So that is a sizable amount. And I think as you look at the history of our military, since 1973, it's been an all volunteer force. And that's, that's a long time that we've been all volunteer force. Personally, I hope it stays that way. But we're talking about the GI Bill, right? So the post 9/11, we're talking about benefits. And I kind of want to lead into that because the post 9/11, which is the bill that we have right now, and the three of these students here with us tonight are all recipients of that. But it started in 2009. That's when the GI Bill was born. And then from 2009 to 2020, in that 11 years, or excuse me, I think it was 19, so 10 years, the U.S. had spent over $9 billion in educational benefits. So what that did is that started generating a lot of conversations in Congress about what is our investment, what's our return on our investment, and so there's been some modifications, and one of them has been that came out about 3 or 4 years ago was that the GI Bill is now a forever GI Bill. And to our audience, what that means is that when you separate, so Alejandro just separated from the Navy in August of this year. He has a 36-month benefit, which more than pays for 4 years of school because it's by the semester. He can use that now. He can use it when he's 30, 40, 70, and it doesn't matter. And then you also have some transferability with those benefits too. It's so if you're before you retire, you can transfer your benefit to your eligible children or your eligible spouse. If you're active duty, you can do that, but you have to have so many years, remaining of active duty in order to do that. But that's a transferability, and that really came from the Sergeant Fry Scholarship, which was back during the Iraq War. Sergeant Fry was killed in action. He was a Marine, and at that time there was no provisions for the GI Bill to be used. So if you were killed in action, there was no educational benefits paid out. Well, that was petitioned, and I believe it came out in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And that if somebody serving is eligible for that GI Bill and they're killed in action, then it is automatically transferred to the spouse or to the eligible children. So there have been a lot of modifications since it came out in 2009. I share that because there's other benefits. There's a vocational rehab. It's called vocational rehabilitation and education, VRE. And what that is, that's a program that if we have a disabled veteran and they qualify, if they need to be retrained for their employment, then the VA will go ahead and pay for their education. And I've seen it go as high as a doctorate in physical therapy and a doctorate in occupational therapy. So the VA does make that commitment to make sure that our veterans are taken care of. And if they need that education avenue in order to get to where they want to go, and they can provide that, they do that. Is there anything you guys want to add about the educational benefits, like good, bad, and different, how it's been so far with your experience?
So I can go. So I was originally using the VRNE program that you just you described much better than I probably could have. And it was super useful and super helpful. There are a lot of benefits to it, especially if you're a service member that was injured while active, and it doesn't allow you to do your career anymore. But just in general, with the GI Bill benefits and VRNE program and all the programs that the VA does offer, it's nice and reassuring to have almost like a safety net. So if you do want to get your education, that you're not struggling with transitioning back to civilian life and getting a job and then going to school and all these stressors that are on top of just transition in general. The VA is really good at helping out with kind of alleviating some of that, be it programs to help you with your mental health or financially. There are, they help with the school. They pay for the school with the GI Bill and everything like that. So I think in general, the GI Bill, a lot of people, I don't think about it enough, even though it's one of the selling points for a lot of people. I don't think that most people think about those benefits before they go into, say, like a recruiting center, and it's talked about a lot, and you're like, wait a minute, I can get school paid for? That's crazy, So the GI Bill is definitely a very strong benefit that a lot of people join the military for nowadays.
I'd like to add.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Sorry. I think it's really important to, have a liaison there at the school, that connection between you and the VA when you can't get certain things done or you can't get the answers that you need. Having that liaison on the school level in higher education is so important. I think that really is what brings it all together. So,
yeah. Alejandro, anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah. So, like you said, I got out in August. It's, not that long ago. The military is stressing the importance of education to make you more competitive, at least in the military. If you're getting out, they want you to be prepared for whatever, future things that you want to do. And they're, I think they made it's called CAPS or TAPS, depending on the branch of service you're in. But it's a class that you have to take. And they highlight basically everything that we just went over. And I also want to say for anyone watching that is veteran, family of a veteran, or is using any benefits. I didn't know this when I was going in, but you could walk into the veterans office and someone like Kevin, and Cassandra, I think, it will help you out. And I was just so amazed by that because I strictly thought it was veterans. But when I went to the orientation at Roosevelt, having seen the kids of veterans, the spouses of veterans, it really, was really great.
Yeah. And to kind of follow up with that, Alejandro, and I know you noticed that. So we at Roosevelt, our population is we have I would say probably 50% of our student enrollment right now is post 9/11 or the VRE benefit. So we have a fair amount of those, but we also have quite a few students that are dependents and their parents or parent has transferred that benefit, that post 9/11 benefit to them. And then they can use it while they're in school. And that's really nice. So why is that a deal now, right? And so a lot of people don't understand that the military now, we have the United States has the most educated military in the history of the world. Okay, when I was in the service just a few years ago, I say, yeah, I have to remind myself, what year was I in? Okay, but when I was in, if you wanted to make E6, E7, E8. You had to have strong performance evaluations that came out every 6 months, and then you had to take these content exams, and you got scored on that, and then they would do this magic thing, and they would come out. There would be a list. They would just do a list, and then they would say, okay, there's 150 people on the list for E7, and we're only going to make 20 during this period, and that's kind of how it was. Now you've got people competing for tech sergeants and chief petty officers and all the different branches that when they're going for E7, E8, you're going up against people that already have their bachelor's degree. Some of them already have their master's degree because education is very accessible, I think, within the military because you have tuition assistance, you have the post 9/11. So if you earn that during maybe your first hitch with the military and you come back in, you can still, there's things that you can do. There's different combinations of benefits. So people do take advantage of that. So maybe somebody that's a career military enlisted or officer, they don't need to use that post 9/11. So now they can transfer to a dependent. And we do see more of that at Roosevelt. We also see a pretty fair amount of, it's called the Dependent Education Assistance Program. It's DEA. And that is a Chapter 35 VA benefit, and it does give those students a monthly stipend to help with their expenses. It doesn't pay everything. It doesn't pay all their tuition and fees, but it does give them money each month while they're going to school. Their parent has to be 100% disabled from the VA in order for them to qualify for that. Then there's other age restrictions and stuff like that as well, which I won't go into, but there is a slew of benefits. There's also, if you're a reservist, there's called the 1606, and that is a reserve benefit. That's a small monthly stipend while they're going to school, and they can use that with tuition assistance, which that helps to pay for some school. So, without confusing everybody out there, And I'm sure some of the people in our audience tonight are like, oh yeah, I've used TA, or oh, I know about 1606 when I was in and now I got out, and those benefits are around. So to Anthony's point, and really what Alejandro was saying as well, is that I think every university, in my opinion, needs to have that veteran and military office, because it's very complicated when you're working with the VA, because not only in our office do we deal with VA, but we also deal with ROTC, Air Force and Army at our university. There's also Navy out there. I'm dealing with tuition assistance with the Army and the Air Force system. We're also billing for Navy. We have a Navy officer right now that's doing his doctorate in psychology, clinical psychology, and they're paying for the whole thing while he's attending school, right? So that's a whole different billing system. So knowing all of those different things in the military is really important to have that centrally located, because the last thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, the three of you, is that you don't want to come to a university and be bounced around all over the place trying to get things taken care of. And I know that's happened to at least one or two of you in the past, and I know it's got to be frustrating. Anybody want to chime in on that?
I have a million things I could say about that, but where it was and where it is are two different places, and that's the good thing. It was not as easy when I first started, but as I've gone through, and since you've gotten here, Kevin, things have been made much more easy, and it's been streamlined now. So yeah, it's when you really need a one-stop shop is what you need to be able to take care of tuition and get all your questions answered, and it's tough because universities, colleges aren't set up that way unless, you have somebody who's kind of been advocating for that, like yourself. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's important that you mention that the one-stop shop thing for everyone, because there are so many different situations. Like, I was active duty my whole time. I never did reserves, whereas Anthony's reserves, and, Alejandro is, active and reserve. So there's all these benefits that can change depending on your situation. If one of your parents was active and gave you their GI Bill. So like the VA office is definitely needed, because I barely know my own situation. So we need big brains like you, Kevin, to help us out with that.
Just a disclaimer, nobody got paid this evening for these comments. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. So Alejandro, anything you want to add or not?
Yes. So even though I took the class fairly recently, TAPS in the military, transitioning out using my benefits, I still didn't know exactly how to use them. And all it took was a phone call for the Veterans Office to get everything answered, everything situated, step-by-step information on how to apply for those benefits, and what to do once I received like that letter from the VA, bring it in like a one-stop shop. It's wonderful. And it took a lot of the stress off my shoulders. I'm already shy as it is, and like having one place, I'm not being bounced around.
Mm-hmm.
It was really helpful.
Yeah, and in my experience and the different positions I've served and the boards and stuff, what I've seen is when you don't have a veterans office at a university, typically they'll assign the certifying of the student veteran to somebody in financial aid or the registrar's office, and it becomes a collateral duty. So their job is just to get the paperwork in, right? But they can't address the other needs and other questions and the discussions that we all have, in our office, whether it's casual or where it's a very meaningful, important dialogue. We want to have those, and we want to always encourage people to do that. So one of our mottos in our center, the university, is that what you say here, what you do here, it stays here, right? So if you want to come in here, you want to blow some steam off, and you want to call somebody a son of a gun, and I'm just really upset with them and this and that, and then everything's good and we can figure it out. That's a good, safe place to do that. I do remember my former institution, the very first space that they gave me for veterans lounge was right next to the freshman lounge, right next to it, and we didn't have any privacy. And it didn't take more than like 6 weeks, and my student veteran said, we don't want to be like right here, because I think somebody had related to Alejandro, you were talking about the gap as you being a freshman at your age compared to maybe a freshman coming in at 18 or 19 years old, right? There's a different level of maturity. And I've seen that. So location of where the Veterans Center is located is important, and how you staff it. And then like my job, and I think my team's job, is develop that collaboration with the registrar's office in admissions and financial aid to make all those things work, so you guys don't have to go out. I can fight those battles for you, or my team can fight those battles for you if they need to, or give you proper guidance. So let's see. So I think one of the questions that was brought up is that how common is it to have universities, university veteran centers? So I can speak to the state of Illinois. So the state of Illinois came out with a House bill back in 2009 that said all state colleges and universities must have a veterans coordinator, veterans director to establish that. That's for state schools. Now, disclaimer, Roosevelt is a private non-for-profit university. Okay, so we're not a state school, we're not state funded. So that was in 2009. I just was on a call yesterday with the state approving authority for Illinois, who looks over all the approving of catalogs and stuff for all the universities. And we just had this discussion about this. He said it's becoming more and more difficult as the longer it's been on the books is to enforce that. So even some of our public schools are maybe fighting it or not maybe living up to what is expected. I would say within the private sector, that's one reason why I was asked to come to Roosevelt, is to establish a veterans office like we do have, because they didn't have that. But the provost, Dr. Andre Merrick, who was a veteran himself, and our dean of students, Corey Williams, who's also a veteran, I had the pleasure of working with the both of them in the past. So I think we've all seen and we knew the importance of having a veteran center. So that's why we established it. Some schools do a really great job. Some just struggle with it. And then there are some schools that don't give it any priority, and then they just give the certifying responsibilities to somebody else as a collateral job. So I hope that answered the question for the individual in the audience. But yeah, it's a continuing battle. But the organizations that I belong to, we advocate to try to to do that, to build those out and expand those, and also some of the federal laws now with the VA. For the GI Bill, they're starting to demand, or they're starting to request some of those qualifications that you need to do those things, or at least have policies in place that help to benefit the students. So, okay.
Can I interject here? I think it's important that even though, and it shows kind of like Roosevelt University's, what's the word? Motivation to keep everything equal and accessible to everybody, including vets, by creating this office because of the history of the school, with the auditorium and everything like that. I think that's it's good that we have a VA center, but unfortunately, like you said, maybe not every school does. Mm-hmm. So maybe in the future that could become a requirement, but I don't actually know the logistics behind that. So.
Yeah, I think that's bigger than you and I put together on that one. But I know it's been discussed many, many, many times, and I think at the end it's very hard to have the federal government to dictate to a private university. But under Title IV, they might be able to do some things. So I don't know, but I know like Texas is really aggressive with their schools. Illinois is very aggressive. Wisconsin is as well. And I'm not sure some of the other states are good are very good at that. Oklahoma does a good job. So some of the people I've worked with in the past, Virginia is another good one. I will tell you, over the years, some of the best prepared students that I've had come to school have been Navy veterans. So Navy has always put a very high mark on education, and a lot of that has to do with the mission, right? Because you're deployed. You're at sea, you're on a submarine. Like, what else are you going to do, right? You got your job, but there's other things you can do. You do have downtime. that's, I think I'm trying to think, like, even a Marine Corps veteran, I remember years ago, they, I forget what they call them, but they're correspondence courses. And so a lot of times you'll see somebody has 5 or 10 of these correspondence courses, and they actually translate into college credit.
Mhm.
And I got his transcripts from the Marine Corps, and he had 41 of these courses on his transcript. And I next time I saw him, I said, "Can I ask you, what did you do in the Marine Corps? Because you did 41 of these." He goes, "Well, I can't lie. I was in the post office the whole time." So, because he was working in the post office, he had all this time. He said, "I just kept ordering courses and kept doing them while I was working." Right. So he was able to knock out 41, and I don't think anybody's done more than that since I've been in this circle, of military education and higher ed. So, so I got another thing I want to pass around to all three of you. What advice would you give to veterans or a veteran returning back to school?
I'll go first, I guess.
Okay.
So my advice would be to know that you're not like alone in your experience, because a lot of the times, even though you might feel like you might be the only person experiencing it, because no one else is talking about it in the room, doesn't mean that other vets are not experiencing the same difficulties you're having. And oftentimes what I have found is that once you bring up a subject or you bring up something you're struggling with, everybody else starts poking their heads up and they start talking about it, and it just opens up the room for conversation. And oftentimes that's really not all you need, but it helps a lot. So my advice would definitely be to reach out, talk to people if you're struggling at all with your transition. And then also, let's see. I'll leave it with that for now. I'll let the other two talk.
Okay.
I would say know that there are a lot of benefits out there that you may not even be aware of. Depending on what you're struggling with, if you're struggling with something, or if you're just trying to find a way to make school feasible in your life, there are so many benefits out there. There's VA Vital. I'm sure that Kevin could speak at length about that. And so the VA comes in and tries to basically make your school experience as a veteran as easy and seamless as possible. And so just know that there are benefits out there for you beyond what maybe, the naked eye could see as a veteran.
Right. Alejandro?
Kind of into what Rachel was talking about, just know that you're not alone. And there are people out there willing to help you, some third-party organizations willing to give their time to help you, apply to college, that sort of thing. I was being helped by Service to School. That is their Instagram as well. And again, they didn't pay me to say this, but they were assisting me with signing up, college essays, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, good. I have another question I want to bring up. So can any one of you or all of you, can you tell us how your military service has helped you with the content of one or more of your courses, whether it's knowledge that you brought to the class topic or a different perspective you've had on a different class topic based upon your experience in the military?
I'll go first on that one, mainly because I think that, with me going into paralegal studies in criminal justice, all that stuff is obviously surrounded by the law and bureaucracy. And so understanding bureaucracy for me has really played a big role in some of the conversations that we've had in class. The sort of the law on the books versus the law in action when it comes to a lot of stuff, how things actually are done. So that's sort of how I tie that into the military.
For me, mine's a little more specific. So I'm taking a class on the atomic bomb, and my first my first platform that I worked on was the E6B Mercury, which is kind of like the quote unquote dooms plane. It has to do with nuclear deterrent and ballistic missiles and everything. And so I was able to see kind of that side of the military aspect. But I was always curious about like how that kind of came to be. And then taking the atomic bomb class, there's certain things that I know that while we're learning in class, I'm like, oh, I think that's why we do this a certain way versus not the other way. So I'm able to actually put my own life experiences kind of in the classroom at the same time, and actually tie what I'm learning with what I've already experienced in life. So
Great. Alejandro?
Yeah, so there's military has helped a lot. Working alongside the doctors, they teach you things. Constantly being like having PowerPoints daily, in the military, learning about the body system, organs, medications, that kind of stuff. It's probably more towards the job that I had, but it's helped out with the class I'm taking in biology. It's most of the stuff in my biology class that I'm taking right now, they had gone over when I was in the military. Time management also, being in the military, there's a time you're either on a time crunch or there's always some sort of deadline that needs to be met. And that has helped me a lot with time management, managing my classes, balancing my social life, balancing like, going to the gym, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yes. Oh, you
I
asked
just-
me a question?
No. I just wanted to add something to that because it came to my mind when we were talking about this. But
Okay.
just quickly, something that I think is probably one of the biggest things that being in school, has sort of been tied into my military career is I took an ethics course, actually a couple ethics courses in college. And, being in the military, some people, love you, some people hate you, right, for what you do. Some people don't understand sort of the ethics that are employed when going into war and when, in whatever way we contribute as troops to, a certain global effort or national effort, whatever it may be. But I guess my point is this, I took an ethics course and it really opened my eyes to, Rachel, you mentioned the atomic bomb and so like Harry Truman's tough decision that he had to make there. That's something that I think we have to employ different forms of ethics to understand. And so taking that course was sort of eye-opening for me, having been in the military, something I'll never forget.
Yeah. And I've heard that from other students as well in different courses, and how sometimes it can really bring back some things that maybe you didn't think about. And then it's provoking. It takes you on just a different path of what you used to do. One thing I do want to make sure that I think is important, because we're talking about different situations and different paths and how we have good experiences, bad experiences. So a very strong partnership, and Anthony touched on it briefly, it's called the VA Vital Program. And I apologize because I can't remember what VITAL stands for, because the military loves acronyms. So does the VA, and I just can't memorize all of them. But
they definitely do.
But they are. So this is an organization. It's led by Dr. Donna Crossman here in Chicago, and they partner up with Roosevelt and 12 other schools. I think down the list is growing. They come in twice a month, and they're available in our Veteran Center for our student veterans if they have anything that's VA connected. So they help them with like VA medical, VA disability. If there's a problem with the post 9/11, that's something like I can't answer or can't resolve, they've got avenues and resources. And it's been a really good partnership, and it really helps for me in order to do that. And then it just came to me, in the chat. It's called the Veterans Integration to Academic Leadership. So there we go. Where would we be without the private chat?
No.
But they're a wonderful team. They come in and they really support our students. And some days there'll be nobody stopping by, and some days we'll have 2 or 3. It just all depends what the traffic is. Another a great veteran resource that we have in Chicago, and there's also 3 other locations in the country, but the Rush Road Home program, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this. It is funded by was a very large grant by the Wounded Warrior Association. I think 5 years ago they received a $45 million grant, and it's at Rush University, and it's a mental health program for all veterans. Don't have to be in education, doesn't matter with your discharge, and it's not only does it take care of veterans that served, but also their family. So anybody that's living in their household, basically, if you've got a significant other, if you have a spouse, if you have children, if you have stepchildren, they don't just treat the veteran, they treat the family as well. And there's absolutely no cost for that. So that is something that all of our students have access to, our student veterans, as well as veterans in the Chicagoland area. And they even bring in veterans from across the country. They'll fly them in. They have housing. They have 2-week therapy, intensive therapy. And we just found out one of our master's students, that's student veteran. She was in the Army. She is and they're doing her master's in clinical psychology, reached out the other night when we had the meeting about doing external clinicals with the Rush, and the professor got back to us like less than 12 hours and said, yep, they just approved that, and they'll be sending out a link for an application, and then they'll be making that application in order to continue. And a lot of our veterans, I will tell the audience, and a lot of people know this, veterans want to help other veterans. They want to serve other veterans. And I will tell you that, me working in higher ed, this was not planned. This was not on my radar. I'm a non-traditional student. I went back, I was 50 when I went back to decide to finish up my college degree, because I never did finish it. And I kind of got pulled into higher ed pretty quick, and I loved it. And then when I was asked to be able to serve my fellow veterans, I honestly, I don't think I could ever have a higher calling than serving my fellow veterans. And it's why I do what I still do. I retired once, and it'd be a long time before I retire again. I got a funny feeling, but it's a great thing to be able to help our veterans, and I know veteran to veteran, they really do appreciate that. And then we have also advocacy organizations for student veterans. So the big one, and I think that's probably going to wrap up our time here, but it's the Student Veterans of America, and that is a national organization. And we do have a chapter at Roosevelt. Anthony is our SVA president of the chapter. Anthony, anything you want to add about SVA that what you're seeing already in your young career with SVA?
Sure. SVA is a great opportunity for student veterans to connect, to network with other veterans. There's over 750,000 members of the Student Veterans of America, over 1,500 chapters here in the United States, and I believe across the world. And I think if nothing else that you would get out of it is, other than that, just being part of that society, of that community of veterans, is also just taking advantage of it and networking, because everyone that is in that association is essentially in the same boat you are. Every student veteran of America is a student, and they're trying to further their career. So why would you not want to network with other student veterans who may have opportunities for you, or you can share ideas and things like that. We have national convention coming up in January, where we're all going to go down to Nashville, and it's just going to be a huge networking event, sharing of ideas, a lot of breakout groups and things like that. So it could be very beneficial to join that. Go ahead.
Anthony, can I just ask a quick question? Because my knowledge on the Student Veterans of America isn't as great as yours. If someone watching right now doesn't necessarily have a VA office at their college or school, could they create a Student of Veterans of America chapter at their school, maybe as a substitute or just to have that connection?
Yes, you can. You can, you have to, one of the biggest parts of Student Veterans of America, although it is a national thing, you have to look into what your school's rules are and how your school governs, becoming an organization at the school level. And then, once you attain that, then you go to the Student Veterans of America and you look to, what their specific rules are and things like that. But absolutely, you could start a chapter at your school if there's not one there. Any higher education, any college or university in the United States, I believe. So,
yeah. Anthony, is there any SVA projects that we're currently focusing on at Roosevelt?
We are. So we want to do a sort of a community service event going forward. I think it would be beneficial to us and to our community to try to organize 2 community service events per semester. So that's the goal for the spring semester, is to do 2. We have to work that around studies. We have to work that around midterms and finals and things like that. So we have to sort of have that in mind. But we're aiming to do one. We were trying to organize something for the end of this month, maybe more like November. But we want to do things like that, and that's sort of kind of the niche that we want to have at Roosevelt for our chapter, is to kind of pay it forward, go out and whether it be community cleanup or anything related to community service events. So we're still looking into that, but hopefully November we'll be able to do something.
Yeah, and that's, my former institution, I can kind of share with the audience some of the projects that the SVA chapter down there did. And one of them was where they partnered up, and it was either the VFW or the American Legion post, one of them in Chicago. And they went there on either it was like Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and they were serving Navy recruits that couldn't go home for the holidays, and they were serving them dinner, and they brought them off base, and they helped with the food, and they did a celebration of the holidays for them. So that was one event. They did another thing in this time of year. Actually, it was called down in Peatone. It's called Trunk or Treat, and it's where they line up the cars and load up all the candy. And they worked with the I believe it was the VFW or the American Legion. Again, I'm not really sure which one it was, but they partnered up with them, and they did work with them. I know the SVA chapter. At another school, they participate in the Veterans Day Parade every year, and they're there, and they reach out to the community and do a lot of that type of support. At SVA, it is good to do those service projects. I mean, I even thinking back when I was in high school, one of my student clubs that was sponsored, I think, by Kiwanis, we used to do service projects, and really even as a young teenager. Those are lasting impressions and projects that stick with you. And I think if we're able to do that as students and be able to give back and touch the life of other community members or veterans, I think it's really important, and that just helps with the educational process, if you will. Is there anything else anybody wants to add? I've got about less than a minute here, but I thought I would just go around the horn. Anybody wants to add anything at all to the conversation? Wow, that's the quietest you guys have been all.
Join SVA.
Yeah,
right.
There you go. You forgot the sign, Anthony. There we go. So listen, I want to pass out the kudos to all 3 of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening and share your experiences with our audience. Also want to thank Professor Margaret Rung and also Professor Andrew Trees for putting this together and getting us the opportunity to talk about this at this wonderful conference. And thank you to Roosevelt University for allowing us all to share with the community and to absolutely build on this and move forward. And if you do have any questions at all, and anybody in the audience, just please reach out to our veterans and military office here at Roosevelt, and we'll be more than happy to help you. We don't care where you're at, what you're doing. If we don't have the answer, we'll get you pointed in the right direction. So with that, I'm going to say adios. Have a great evening, and we will see you all soon.
Bye.